You're listening to the TV Obsessive channel, presented by TVObcast.com.
Hello, welcome back to episode 73 of the TV Obsessive podcast. My name is Ryan Kirksey. I'm a writer and contributor for TVObcessive.com and joined once again by Cameron Crane, executive editor for the site. I have a question for you today on Tuesday night between the hours of 7 p.m. and 1 a.m., those 6 hours. How many of those hours will you spend watching election coverage?
Oh no. I mean, probably all of them.
Okay, you're a sicko like me. Okay, good.
It's not.
5.9.
It's not good. I mean, well, look, I think you said 7 p.m. I have not yet decided when to turn it on,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I might not turn it on until a little bit later.
Right.
That's a definite possibility because I don't know how many results you're going to be getting at 7 p.m. I don't need to be turning it on until results are coming in from the East Coast, at least,
Yeah,
So
I was going to say, once we turn it on, it will be John King's magic electorate wall, for I don't know how many hours until we fall asleep, I guess.
well, and the fear is whether we're going to get results that night or not. Of course, last time we really didn't, but there were particular circumstances in 2020 that people might be aware of. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah,
that's why I think we're both, and I'm glad to hear it, because that's why I think we're both sickos, is there's no way we're going to get any sort of finality Tuesday night, but I'm still going to watch, I don't know how many hours of it.
probably not. It's just like keep watching, but I guess I have to give up. So good.
Anyway, that's coming up, but a lot more things going on. What else, what are we going to go through today, Cameron?
Yeah, so we're back to talk about disclaimer. We're on episode 6, so it's the penultimate episode of the series, I guess. I mean, this definitely seems like it's a limited series. I know sometimes they surprise you. Got a note about
Yep.
something for you here in a moment on that front. But um first, yeah, we'll talk through what's been in the news a bit this week. We are recording on Saturday. We usually record on Friday. Apologies to people who are, sitting on the edge of their seats going, "Where's the podcast?" Just waiting, just like anchoring for the pod. Anyway, sorry. It's November 2nd. What caught your eye this week, right?
Well, can we talk about our favorite game show to start? Let's talk about Traders because we are like 2 months away from more Alan coming, and I could not be more excited about that.
Yeah, we got official announcement of the release date of January 9th, which I think is in line with the rumor that you mentioned here, I don't know, a month or two ago. And I think, and there's announcements of people who are going to be on it too, but I don't know about you. Personally, I don't watch any of these reality shows, so the names are just like meaningless to me.
Yeah, I recognize no names of any of these people. Yeah.
Other people might, though, I imagine. It is interesting, again, how the American version has decided, well, let's load up with people who are known from other reality shows.
Mhm.
I wonder if look into like you get a new UK season at some point too.
I hope so. I will be on board. It's interesting. Maybe I shouldn't now that we know that we have 2 months until the next season. I've been sort of saving the Australia season that you said just sort of like maybe like a holiday watch or something, just something where like I really am desperate for something good that I know that I love and just haven't watched that one yet.
I think there are 2 Australian seasons, and then there's one New Zealand season.
Okay, okay.
And the New Zealand one definitely feels like the lowest budget. It's just like, so we're gathered here at a motel.
Yeah.
It's like, all right. I mean, it's like a pretty nice hotel, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking forward to Traders. I believe that there's also like a trailer here and things people can check out if they're excited. But yeah, I saw someone talking about this on social media and wondering about like, hey, do I have to like the reality stars? And I think we're making clear the answer is no, because we don't really know who these people are. But
No,
maybe some
I
people get into
enjoyed
it more on that front.
I was gonna say I enjoyed it having no background or knowledge of these folks beforehand.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, seriously, with some of them, it's like, oh, this guy was on The Bachelor. It's like, okay, I know what The Bachelor is. The other thing is they say the show the person was on. I was like, I've never heard of that show before.
Exactly.
So I mean, this is how out of touch I am in terms of some of this stuff. Um, yeah, we got that to look forward to. Also, some other stuff. This announcement of a show with Jason Bateman and David Harbour. This also caught my eye. You put it in our notes before I had a chance to. DTF St. Louis. What do you think about this?
Yeah, so this is interesting. I know that Jason Bateman has sort of an ongoing deal with Netflix to do a certain number of things. Perhaps David Harbour does as well. I'm not entirely sure. Obviously, he's got the fifth season of Stranger Things coming up. Bateman coming off of Ozark, and he's going to be on a Netflix movie, a holiday thriller, Carry On with Taron Egerton coming in December. So I think these guys are kind of tied to Netflix. So they're going to do this show called DTF St. Louis, which is apparently a dark comedy about a threesome where one of them ends up dead. And I mean, this is just the names attached to it. Yeah, it caught my eye. This seems like a pretty interesting pairing that I will be sure to check out.
Yeah, same. But I think doesn't this say it's HBO? The URL here says HBO.
Oh, oh yeah, you're right. You're right. I'm sorry. Yeah, so that's what's interesting. Okay, so both these guys have been tied to Netflix projects. Now, I guess they are moving on to HBO things. Yeah, both have on past and ongoing Netflix projects. But you're right. Yeah, this is an HBO series, DTF St. Louis.
Yeah. So maybe we'll plug this in Sunday at 9 p.m. It'll be the next new, big
There
thing
you go.
everyone's talking about. Whenever it comes about, I think we're relatively early stages here, not getting released date or anything like that. Speaking of Netflix, though, and the kind of overall deals, which I don't know if either of these actors have that kind of overall deal. It's usually more directors. And one of those directors, people are aware, is David Fincher.
That's
And
right.
you go, oh, well, okay, are you going to make something? Or are you going to make more Mindhunter? No, never going to make more Mindhunter. Made it clear. And we're sad. What do you think about this little news item that apparently he's playing with the idea of doing an English language spin-off of Squid Game of some kind?
Yeah, I mean, you could have told me pick the current the current IP that exists in the world today that David Fincher is going to choose to pursue for his next project. I don't know how many guesses I would have gone through before I got to Squid Game. This is one of the things where it makes me think about, is this David Fincher's idea, or is this Netflix saying, yeah, well, here's how much we'll add to your check if you do a Squid Game
Yeah.
spinoff for us.
Here's a good idea. Can you get Trent Atticus to do the music? Is that
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. This is definitely in that category of thing where I read this and I thought, I don't think that's such a good idea, but I'll watch it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Um, David Fincher, he's really done some good work, but I am seriously disappointed that they canceled Mindhunter. And there's some other stuff too. Like he made one Girl with the Dragon Tattoo movie,
Yes.
which I thought was really good personally.
Yes.
And that's like a trilogy. No
Yeah,
more of
exactly.
those. Just
Exactly.
go watch the Swedish language ones if you want to. So I don't know what the deal is with that. There was also, speaking of Squid Game, another teaser trailer released, and I didn't even put that in our notes. I think we've kind of covered, hey, new Squid Game season's coming, and we don't want to get in too much spoiler territory, but just to mention for people, I guess, not about Squid Game, there is another trailer out there. If you want another trailer, maybe has a little bit more information than we've gotten before. That's
Yeah,
coming
and
in
as
December.
people probably know, this was actually Squid Game was turned into a real life game show, I think a couple of years ago. So I mean, there's one of those things that there will be no end, or at least no foreseeable end to this content.
They're trying to mine it for as much money as they can, which makes sense because it was like the most successful show in Netflix history, global
Exactly.
phenomenon out of nowhere, but there's always this not always a tension, but it is a case where I feel a certain tension between, okay, well, what makes sense, what serves the story, what makes sense like artistically, as it were. And I'm a little worried that what they're doing across the board is more along the lines of how can we get more money out of this game show?
Yeah,
You
exactly,
Few more
exactly.
seasons?
We'll give Auteur director David Fincher some leverage to do something. Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested to see what his spin on this will be. So no other details other than that at this point. They're just pointing mainly towards right now. Yeah, December 26th, season two, 2025, season three of Squid Game happening.
Yeah, indeed. Which, again, I'll watch. I'll definitely watch season two of Squid Game, and
Yep.
probably it'll be entertaining. And if David Fincher makes something, I will probably check it out. I just don't even know if it makes sense. English language spin-off. Well, anyway. Um, we've got other teaser trailers for Marvel shows, Daredevil and
Yeah,
such. You're excited about?
I wanted to hit on this just because Marvel released sort of a sizzle reel this week of I think it's up to 6 shows they are going to release now over the next 15, 16 months. This comes off of you and I talking a couple of months ago about how Marvel had come out saying, we're going to slow down and not do as much. And I guess they did for 2024. I thought that was mainly due to the strike and that maybe also their motivations of like, let's get things right. But they're really pushing the content now, starting even in December with animated series, with a new Daredevil show, with Ironheart show, with Wonder Man coming a year from now. So I'll be in on the Daredevil show. That's one of my favorite Netflix shows of all time. I thought that show was fantastic. We've talked about how I was pleasantly surprised by Agatha. I think they've done a very good job in back-to-back years, sort of October, sort of spooky season content with that and with Werewolf by Night. I'm going to probably for the rest of these say we'll see. And I may not just commit to watching them, as I've committed to watching every other Marvel show that they came out in the past. Got a couple I'm excited about. Others I could probably take or leave at this point.
Right on. I'm curious about Daredevil. How many seasons of Daredevil did they make on Netflix? Was it 2 or 3?
3, and then they had a series or one season called The Defenders, where they paired together Daredevil and Luke Cage and Iron Fist and Jessica
Right, right,
Jones.
right. That's what I was asking because I watched all of those shows and I
Yeah,
watched The Defenders. And then after The Defenders, I watched nothing. And I think a lot of those shows had one more season after The
yeah,
Defenders.
yeah.
And it was just like after I watched The Defenders, I'm kind of done. It was like right then that I started just to not watch this stuff anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Again, I have no
I'll
argument
say
for
this.
why I stopped watching. I just like I'm just kind of burned out. I'm just kind of done. You
Yeah,
know.
there were some of those I thought were quite poor in quality, but I just am. Uh, I mean, I don't know if we talked about this before. Daredevil is from when I was 6 years old, my favorite comic book character. So I'm sort of
Yeah,
pot committed at this point. So I'm all in here, especially with Charlie Cox back, Vincent D'Onofrio back, John Bernthal back as the Punisher. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be in on this starting March 4th.
cool, cool. Um, I asked, well, let's where did we go? All right, I put this one in here for you. Presumed Innocent. You told me that you enjoyed the first season. I still have not watched it. Apparently, a
Yeah,
lot of people have. It's just like hitting numbers of, top of Apple TV Plus's ranks. Um, so they renewed it for season 2, which is kind of weird because it was supposed to be a limited series, but again, they want more money, so they always do this kind of thing. However, reading this little article from Deadline about season 2, it kind of strikes me like it's going to just be an entirely new show. I mean, like, what's the through line other than the executive producers? What do you think about this?
yeah. This surprised me a little bit. I think we talked about how I did watch this season and was just completely enthralled and just was all in. I mean, for the first 96% of the season, I thought that it's sort of crashed and burned at the end in terms of how they decided to finish the show. However, it left with characters and plot lines and where they could have gone so many doors wide open to where they could have brought some of these people back. I thought some of the characters were incredible on this show. Um, so yeah, it does surprise me considering that, according to Apple TV, this was their most watched drama ever, that they're
Mhm.
not going to sort of continue this story, which had, like I said, many pathways to do so. I guess, like you said, this is just sort of the way some of these shows are going right now, anthology.
Yeah, I mean, this almost feels like I mean, okay, to be clear, because I didn't mention everything to people, they're going to base it on different source material, like an entirely different book by an entirely different author, entirely different actors and all of that, right? I mean, the closest thing that comes to mind to me actually is like True Detective, almost.
Yeah.
Not even Fargo or something like that, where there's
That's exactly what it seems like. Yeah, a case that has to be solved. The presumed innocent season one, the book, the movie, this series was all about one case from beginning to end. It seems like that's what will happen here. It does seem like very, very true detective, maybe without the mysticism.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like the difference between True Detective season 1 and season 2.
Yeah.
We're gonna call it the same thing. I don't know. Maybe with this one, maybe it'll feel like the same show a bit more than that. I don't know. Again, I still have not gotten around to watching presumed innocent season one, but I recall our previous conversation, you saying some of those things about how you could see, okay, how they might go with season two and being kind of intrigued about it. And it seems like you're not going to get that at all. They're just going to do something kind of
Yeah,
entirely
like
new here.
the script was half written for them when they finished that season. So now I guess they're, like I said, they're starting over with new source material.
So it goes. Anyway, that is happening. And the last thing, yeah, are you gonna watch it? You want to watch this? NFL is gonna like do
Yes.
some Simpsons thing.
Yeah, so I guess last year, NFL Disney did a Toy Story version of an NFL game where they sort
Yes, it
of
did.
Toy Storyified a game, and it was on ESPN Plus. Now this year, we're going to get on Disney Plus and ESPN Plus a December 9th game between the Dallas Cowboys and Cincinnati Bengals that will be it's going to be in the Simpsons universe, where the game will look like it's being played in Springfield, I guess, and they'll have animated versions of some real ESPN talent calling this game. I'm more curious than anything how that works. You know, I've watched the like Nickelodeon slime games and stuff like that, so I just want to see how they turn an actual live game into a live Simpsons universe animation. I'm just fascinated to see how it works.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious. It does strike me as more of a novelty or something than something that has intrinsic appeal. Like who wants
Right.
this? You know,
Yeah.
but am I curious to see what it looks like and how it goes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll admit that I sort of am. But I think it is something where I would guess it's more like, all right, this technology we have enables this live kind of animated version of a football game.
Yeah.
Let's try that out. Let's see how that goes. Let's see if people watch it, or like if our kids into it or whatever.
Yeah, I'm more
Um,
sort of curious how it works, more so than, oh, will this be an innovative thing that makes me care more about football? No, I couldn't care more about football than anyways. I'm just more curious how this is going to happen.
it might, AI, blah blah blah, AI,
Yeah,
magic of AI, blah. I mean, I know they put like microchips in all of the players' helmets and
right,
shoulder pads or
right.
whatever, and track them for that. And then the animation is just clearly done with computers, and people will talk about AI. And I remember
Yeah,
reading some stuff about this Toy Story version last year about how they did that. And I don't know, there's all this AI stuff. I've discovered, speaking of football, do you know that on Thursday night on Amazon Prime you can watch Prime Vision? You ever check out Prime Vision
you're talking
on
about the one
Amazon?
with the next gen stats version of the game.
Yeah, it gives you some of that. The thing that most appeals to me about it is it gives you the game in the all 22.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that's right. That's right. Yeah, they're sort of following the model of ESPN, which has done obviously the standard telecast, the Manning cast. You can do the obviously you have Spanish language version, but you can also sort of do the alternative view or statistical view of the game. Amazon does seem to be sort of following with the whatever platform you want to consume this game, we're gonna give it to you.
yeah, it's kind of cool. Then they throw in some other AI, quote unquote AI stuff, and I'm not here for this. Like we put a red circle around this defender because we think he's going to get a sack. I don't care.
Yeah.
um, but it is curious. I mean, it is cool that they're giving options, and it makes me wonder, if more stuff goes to streaming as we move forward, to what extent we'll also start getting more options in terms of how we view the game, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, with streaming, you have, I guess, unlimited options of how you package these things compared to just linear TV, where it's either on ABC or it's on ESPN. You can devote as many different channels to this as you want. So who knows the limit to what they'll
yeah.
explore in years ahead. Yeah.
But I kind of enjoy watching the all 22, and then
Yeah.
they show the highlights. The instant replay footage is like standard broadcast. But they show the
Okay.
live play in the all 22, and then if they do the replay, it's like it would be if you were watching the normal broadcast. So
Interesting.
it's kind of cool because you actually like see what's going on. Anyway, um, there's that, and that's all I haven't been watching much recently myself, other than football, I guess, but you put on here that you started watching Battlestar Galactica
Yeah,
for the
I
first
guess,
time.
for the first time, if famously, I have not seen Breaking Bad, The Wire, Mad Men, Twin Peaks. So I decided to start an old show that has a real strong popular following, and it's not one of those four. I just decided to start
Yeah.
Battlestar Galactica for a number of reasons. And I maybe just more I took it as a sign that so I was going through this. I was finishing up the Office Rewatch podcast. The last episode, the finale, has this sort of reference to Battlestar Galactica. I was listening to a podcast talking about the best TV presidents ever, and they talked about President Roslin on Battlestar Galactica. I noticed that my favorite Lost rewatch podcasters just started a Battlestar Galactica rewatch podcast. So I was like, this is all coming to me for a reason. I've always been curious about this show, so I've started it. I'm towards the end of the mini series,
Oh.
which apparently is the first thing, and so then I will then start the 4 seasons. So I don't know what your experience is with this show. Have you seen it? Do I need all the extra content, or what's your recommendation?
Oh, yeah, okay, absolutely. I'll give you some recommendations here. So you start out with what they call the mini series. I don't know. It's like it starts out with a movie, and I don't remember exactly how this works.
Yeah.
But then you really get into it, and so you're not quite there yet. The experience that I had here, that a lot of people had, was circa 2010, 2011, or something like that. Was when Battlestar Galactica hit my radar. I think maybe it came to Netflix or something.
Yeah.
Something must have enabled this because the show is a little bit older than that. Um, it's like, all right, we're watching Battlestar Galactica, and just got into this huge experience of binging Battlestar Galactica. And I was doing it with my girlfriend at the time, and we would just like sit there watching Battlestar Galactica for like 10 hours a day. At least I have it a couple of times, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and it's great. I mean, it's great. I don't know. I don't want to give spoilers to you or discourage you at all. I'm not the biggest fan of how it ends.
Okay. This not
Um,
of how the TV series ends, right?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But I won't say much more on that. And I don't think it like ruins the show. I think the show is very enjoyable. Now you're asking about extraneous stuff, and I have to double check on the details so you can look into it. If you like, seriously, if you want to run things by me, you can. I do recall that one of the things was there was this film they put out. It was called The Plan,
Yes.
and don't watch that. That's worthless.
Okay. So there's the mini series which preceded this television series. Then
Uh-huh.
midway through the television series, there's something called Razor, which is apparently either a movie or
Yeah, you want to watch
something.
that.
Maybe.
You want to watch
Okay.
that.
And then another season of the series. And then after the series, I guess another movie called The Plan.
Yeah, don't watch that. That's stupid.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and then that was
Scratch that off the list.
that one stuck in my mind because it was particularly disappointing because we had watched the entire series. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, there's this movie called The Plan, and they like put it on. You're like, what? What? It's
Okay.
like I don't
All
know.
right. So
It's
yes
like
to
it's going
Razor.
back towards the beginning, and you're
Yeah.
seeing stuff that you saw before, and then more stuff in between that stuff that's just kind of like worthless.
Interesting.
You
Okay.
know, you don't need to watch
Okay.
that movie.
All right. Ignoring that
Uh,
one, sticking to the miniseries in the show then. Okay.
but it's fun. It's a good time.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, it's
Glad
good.
you
It's
watched
very
it.
good so far. Very good so far.
And just a warning, I imagine, once you get past the miniseries, it'll get its hooks in you and you'll probably have some binging in your future.
Yeah, I was looking at this. Some of these seasons are, boy, 20 plus episodes. I'm just maybe just not familiar with that concept anymore, but some of them are long seasons.
This is how it used to be. A
Yeah,
TV season
exactly.
was like 22 episodes, right? You remember when we were young?
I remember. I remember.
Yeah, so but no, Battlestar Galactica is quite enjoyable. We'll have to, touch base on this as you go and see.
Yes, definitely.
I'm a big fan of Gaius Baltar personally. Not that I'm a fan of everything he does, but I'm a big fan of him. I like
Right
that.
now, right now, 1.75 hours in, he's not looking good, but a
No,
long,
no,
long way
no.
to go.
He's not like a good guy, but he's a good character. He's a good character. Um, cool. So, all right, we'll check back in with Ryan as we move forward. Get mentioned Battlestar Galactica, and yeah, let's move on to talk about disclaimer. We're on to
Yes, sir.
episode 6. So spoilers will be on the table here for everything through the first 6 episodes of Disclaimer on Apple TV Plus. And we'll pop in a little music here and be back in about 10 seconds.
Okay, we're here to talk about Disclaimer, Episode 6 on Apple TV Plus, originally aired Friday, November 1st. Again, this episode, as all others, written and directed by Alfonso Cuarón, and Disclaimer is taken from 2015 Renee Knight novel of the same name. In Episode 6, we see Nicholas recovering in the hospital from his drug overdose. Stephen tries to sneak in a syringe of cleaning chemicals to kill him, trying to further ruin Catherine's life. While there, Catherine sees him, attacks him, and everyone in the hospital thinks it's Catherine is the one who is losing control. Robert, unaware of what's happened, apologizes to Stephen for what Catherine did and invites him to come back and visit Nicholas again. In the past, we learned that Sasha did not leave Italy because of a aunt passing away, but because of a fight between her and Jonathan. Catherine's version of the past begins to tell a different story than in the Perfect Stranger book. She recalls Jonathan watching them, taking photos of them, but she did not interact with him at all. At the end of the episode, after multiple attempts to try and talk to Stephen, Catherine breaks into his house so that she can tell her version of the truth. As they sit down over tea, Stephen fills hers with sleeping pills. Catherine drinks the tea and says it is time for her voice to be heard. So we are starting in this penultimate episode to get some sense of what we expected, which is there's a different version of the truth out there, at least Catherine's version of the truth. We're getting some glimpses of that now. So why don't we start there and say, okay, how far have we deviated from the book? It seems like it's quite far for what little we know so far.
You mean from the book within the story?
Yeah, the book
Yeah.
within the story. Yeah, The Perfect Stranger.
Yeah, so I mean the version that we start seeing in this episode, which I think it becomes like retroactively clear as Catherine's version, right?
Yes.
Is wildly different from the version that we saw that was representing the book. So clearly we're on the right track about that. What we saw before was what is in the book that Nancy wrote, The Perfect Stranger. I definitely enjoyed this episode more than episode 5, personally. It was nice to be back to the multiple timelines. It felt much more like the show we had been watching through the first 4 episodes. And yeah, I mean, that's the big question I found myself thinking about as we come out of this episode is, we're going to get Catherine's version, or at least some of it. How much of it are we going to get? Because you mentioned you put sleeping pills in her tea.
Yeah, yeah.
And she already took a sip. So, like,
Yeah. I
is she
mean,
going to pass
it's
out
not
before
like
she finishes?
it's not like he like is gave her, I mean, something that's gonna kill her or something. I mean, it's just she might get drowsy. I don't know what he's expecting, but
I don't think it's going to kill her. I think I mean, it might be possible. They kind of make a point of having the nurse or whatever say, "Don't take more than one of these
right,
pills," and
right.
he's like crushing up 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
Um, she takes a sip of the tea. Oh, don't drink the tea. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you taking tea? English people
Never,
and their tea.
never.
Um, but this is the big thing I'm curious about. So we're clearly getting Catherine's version, or at least some of it. And I'm just noting, I think there is an opening for the possibility that it gets cut off and we don't get the whole thing if she does
Yeah.
like pass out from the sleeping pills. But then are we going to ultimately get the truth, as it were? Is the show going to give us a representation of events that's not from a perspective?
Yes,
And
this is my big question. I'm glad you mentioned that because we've clearly got at least the story up to this point from The Perfect Stranger, the book, the narrative that Nancy wrote based on what limited information she has. Now we're starting to see and hear Catherine's version of the truth based on what she is saying she is going to tell Stephen, at least from these limited flashbacks that we get. But then are either of those versions actually the truth? I mean, Catherine's sort of speaking as the voice of all of us, who's sort of been thinking this, there's got to be another version here. Tell us what it is. But those, so I guess it should save some space for her to give her version and tell what happened, and then see sort of what my questions still are. Because, I mean, hey, those photos exist. There's no denying that. Something has happened.
Mhm.
Jonathan got them somehow. So what if she did not go down a road that leads to them being together? I'm curious sort of how that happened. So I'm very curious. Yeah, will there end up being three perspectives here? I don't think so. I think we get the Catherine version and the Nancy version.
And
But
that's it.
I'm open to being wrong about that.
Well, I mean, I think it certainly could go that way, and that could be interesting and compelling in its own right, that we might be left with kind of two versions of events and to decide for ourselves what we trust. Um,
Yeah,
of course, rationally, there'd be some grounds for trusting Catherine's version a little bit more than the version of events written by someone who wasn't there. But of course, there's also a motivation for Catherine to tell the story in a way that makes her look as good as possible, and we have worries about that. Yeah, so
yeah,
but I'm really, really, really curious to see what happens in the finale along these lines. I presume it's going to pick up with them sitting there in the kitchen. It's going to pick up with Catherine's version of what happened in Italy with the
yeah.
sleeping pills, though. Again, how much of it do we get? Does she have the chance to tell the whole story? And then also this question of whether we get um, a version that is like objective reality, which
Yeah,
could happen. I could see it happening, and I could see this going in various ways in terms of structure of the finale.
yeah. I don't know. I agree with you. I don't want to close the door on any of that and sort of how they tell this story. Um, I, I think that from Catherine's perspective, I think we'll find out there's something. There was actually an affair. There was some, time that they spent together, or some intimate time that they spent together. I think that she's not concerned about. Like, that aspect of it is gone. She can't go back and change that. That part of her marriage may be damaged forever. However, she's at the point where I've got to at least try to save this, maybe even reputationally, this idea that I had something to do with someone's death. I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, I cheated on my husband. It's another to say,
Well,
I was complicit in someone dying.
and beyond that, I think that she intuits what Stephen is up to.
Yeah.
I mean, um, I found it at least a little bit surprising when it became clear that his plan was to kill Nicholas.
Yeah.
Um, but that becomes clear
Let's be
here.
clear. Catherine is not the worst person in this story right now.
Yeah,
That's
we
clearly
were
Stephen.
we were grappling with that question last week, and I think, oh,
Yeah.
okay, definitely Stephen is off the deep end, as you put in our notes. He's bad. He is the worst person insofar as he is looking to kill this young man Nicholas, who has he didn't do anything wrong, you know. And it also sounds like from the voiceover that Stephen intends to later kill Catherine.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
sounds
I
like,
think
right?
so. I think so. Yeah.
So
He's just a straight eye for an eye, motivation right now. I mean, he can't see beyond that.
yeah, but it's even beyond that. It's even beyond. It's not. You know, it's the thing. Eye for an eye. Part of that it involves a notion of proportionality. You know,
Right.
this
Yeah.
is like what John Wick does is not eye for an eye. It's like
Right.
it's going overboard, man. Um, Even if we're on John Wick's side too. Yeah, whatever, if we're referencing that film. But Steven, no, I'm not really on Steven's side, and this is definitely petty vengeance, and he doesn't really know what happened. But anyway, what the point I was trying to make is I feel like with him visiting in the hospital, Catherine may not know that Stephen has the intention of killing Nicholas, right? But I think she senses it, and someone else might, like Robert, would say, "Oh, you're being paranoid. What's wrong with you?"
Yeah.
But she's not. She's right. So in terms of what leads her to break into his house, I think it is beyond what you were saying. I mean, there is that level of her reputation and career and life, but I think she
Yeah.
senses that Stephen is a threat to go as far as we know he intends to go.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think that she feels if she doesn't act, Stephen is going to act, and he's going to take this to some extreme that, I think to your point, she can tell he has nothing left to live for. So he will do whatever it takes to destroy her, even at the cost of, you know, his own life or going to jail, whatever it is, right? I think that she clearly sees that as God. It feels like I have to take these steps of breaking into his house to intervene.
Of course, if all that's right, why are you drinking the damn tea? Don't drink the tea.
Exactly.
Oh, Catherine, I just can't help it. I'm British. It's a tea. You can't resist. Um, yeah, so we'll see how that goes. Um, let's one other thing we mentioned that I feel like we're jumping around now, but not sure where to go next. But it's interesting insofar as so there's three timelines, as it were. One is clearly Catherine's version of what happened in Italy,
Yeah.
but the other one that's not the present is again with the younger versions of Stephen and Nancy in the time period when they're returning from Italy after
Yeah.
Jonathan has died. And Stephen letting us know about how, Nancy took some liberties with the text. And
Yes. Yeah.
we're not told exactly why Sasha came back to London, but we are told definitively it's not because her aunt died or whatever it was. Um, she and Jonathan had some kind of fight.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some
It's
kind of disagreement that happened. Yeah, not clear necessarily, but it's not the pure motive that Nancy laid it out to be in the book, certainly.
no, and it seems from what we see pretty bad. I mean,
Yeah,
we're given Stephen's perspective, and I'm not sure Stephen even knows
yeah.
as much as Nancy knew. So I don't know that we're ever going to really find out. But it's worth thinking about the question a little bit because if you think about those scenes where Nancy's on the phone with Sasha's mother,
Yeah.
it definitely seems to me like Sasha's mother is accusing Jonathan of having done something heinous.
So
Not just like
yeah,
they
this
had
is
a
another thing I'm glad we're bringing up because to me, I see something like that, which is let's go back and retell or at least reimagine why Sasha left. And it makes me think, okay, well, then that Sasha Jonathan story has then something to do with what happens then later with Jonathan and Catherine. Clearly she left, but why does that matter? The reasons why she left Italy, if that doesn't then factor into what happens after that point, right? Um, and maybe I'm wrong, but it's like, does that matter to the story? If is it just trying to paint Jonathan in a better light? If it's just he just stays there after his girlfriend had to leave because of the death, something like that.
well, I definitely think it paints him in a worse light with what we see now, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of
Yep.
impugning his character to some degree. What did he do? I was trying to think about this and I was struggling to even speculate about what would be at the level of making Sasha's mother as upset as she seems to be,
Yeah.
because then she's making Nancy so upset she like breaks the telephone.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, is it just like I don't approve of my daughter dating your son, that type of thing, or is this like he is doing things to her that we just cannot stand for?
she beat her up. Did she come home with some black eyes? I
Exactly.
mean, like,
Exactly.
what else could it be other than like if he assaulted her?
Yeah.
Um, that's the only kind of thing that comes to mind for me that would be at the level of sparking the apparent anger, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean,
Can I
it
give
also
you?
kind of feels like when Nancy calls to say, "Hey, Jonathan's dead," the response she's getting is, "Who cares?" or like, "I'm glad," or something like this, and then they never hear from them again.
Can I give you a theory?
Yeah.
Okay, so my theory, and this goes back to this may have been episode 3 when the parents go to Italy to see Jonathan's body. I can't been able to get this out of my head, and maybe there's another explanation that I'm not remembering, but they notice some kind of scar wound on his arm, and they say, "What's that from?"
Oh
They say,
yeah.
"Oh, it must have been from the accident." So I do wonder if Jonathan is someone who Sasha didn't do something he wanted, didn't give him what he wanted, goes down this path we were just talking about, beats her up, whatever, they get into this fight, she leaves. Um, Catherine is making eyes at him on the beach, whatever, something happens. She, in the end, somehow doesn't give him something that he wants. There's a fight, there's something aggressive. Catherine fights back, wounds him somehow. Something then happens again with their son. So this is much, much, much more pointed towards Jonathan being the instigator, the aggravator here, as opposed to, the savior, which we're led to believe through the course of the book. I have no idea, but is he sort of a someone that's causing these things to happen?
Yeah, a good callback to the wound, because I think it would be. I almost feel like the show owes us an explanation of that.
Yeah, and maybe
Um,
it's just from getting rescued, but they haven't explained that.
yeah, I mean that's the explanation they already gave. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, oh, something happened during the accident, you know. Um, so yeah, I wonder what we'll find out.
yeah.
I
I'm
mean, it could
very.
all,
You're raising the best point, which is will we get the true perspective as opposed to the two polarizing perspectives?
yeah, and part of me really feels like we will, and that the series will end that way.
Yeah, yeah,
That's just my hunch.
yeah.
I could be wrong. Could be coming back next week, being disappointed, and being like, What's up? What about Jonathan's wound? They never told us anything. What? Just like
Exactly.
Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Um,
Santa Claus in Baltimore. Oh yes, that'll live on
uh,
forever.
yeah. So just call back to our Lady in the Lake coverage. Um, what else was I going to say? Yeah. So okay, I was thinking about though. Do we find out exactly what happened between him and Sasha? Maybe. And I kind of hope so. And maybe the wound you're mentioning relates to that. But maybe we don't. To your question, well, like, okay, why is this here? I think it does at least get me thinking further along the lines of, well, maybe Jonathan is a bad guy. And so going back to the theory I floated a couple weeks ago that maybe Jonathan is actually the reason that Nicholas ends up out in the middle of the sea. Like maybe he put him out there.
Yep,
What we saw before was the version of events in the book. So maybe, look, various things about this could be false.
yep,
Like Jonathan being on the beach when Nicholas is out there. So here's a possibility.
exactly.
Catherine does fall asleep on the beach. She's taking a nap. While she's asleep, Jonathan comes and encourages her kid out into the water and pushes that rowboat all the way out past the waves, out into the middle of the sea.
Yeah,
And then Jonathan can't get back, and that's why he died.
yeah. I almost think, now that we're talking about it almost seems almost too neat to do it that way, right? It's like this whole time
Mm.
we've been painting this person as this awful, awful woman who deserved what she got at the end of this book. It's just the heel turn is, oh, actually it was Jonathan all along. I mean, it's like, okay, yeah. I mean, it's sort of a standard trope there. It's like
I
we can see that happening. Maybe, hopefully, it's a little bit more. Hopefully, there's some more complexity to it. But yeah, I can see us having written the script already before we watched it.
Yeah, I mean, like, okay, yeah, I'm with you. I hope the show does better than that,
Yeah,
because that does almost feel a little bit too, I don't know, stock ending kind
yeah,
of thing. It's like
yeah, yeah.
it's a twist that you see coming. Uh, one of those things where, like, if they tell you there's a twist in the story, like, oh, it's obviously going to be this.
Yeah.
But there are other possibilities, and that's the big one I keep thinking about is one of the things I do find most interesting about the show is its structure and this idea that we're getting events from someone's perspective. And so, yeah, that remains my biggest question is whether we will get the
Yeah.
truth per se, or whether it's always going to be from one perspective or another. I feel like we could only get some of these answers about Jonathan if we do get that kind of, you know, omniscient narrator perspective. So we'll see.
Yeah. I think that's a very good point. And I just checked. The finale is 57 minutes long, so it's got some meat to it that we could hopefully spend some time exploring that. So we'll see what we get.
Yeah. Yeah, these have varied a little bit. Some have been 55, 57 minutes, some of them are like 45. That's fine. Let's see. Anything else we need to hit on here? Anything in our
Yeah, I mean,
notes?
I thought this was a good episode, like as you say, going back to the timelines, getting us pointed in the direction of where we thought we would go, which is the perspective of what Catherine experienced. Good episode. Hopefully, it sets up something that will happen that's great in the finale. But yeah, I mean, pretty clear two timeline. We're starting to see what we hope to see. I guess Stephen was the biggest surprise for me. The man, yeah, this guy has just lost it.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, well, clearly he's trying to wreck her life, but
Yeah,
going this far, he wasn't going to kill the
exactly.
kid. There's a question, another question. Like, so if Catherine does fall unconscious from the sleeping pills, what's Stephen going to do? Because she has wrecked his plan at very least, insofar as he's told us his plan was to kill Nicholas, make Catherine deal with that loss of a child for however long,
Yeah.
and then kill her. She's messed that up,
Yeah, yeah. Unless it's
right?
just she's going to sleep for a whole day and he's going to spend tomorrow going back to the hospital and trying to do it again. But yeah, that doesn't seem to be the direction that this would take.
Well, and what if you're Steven and you give her the sleeping pills and she does fall unconscious, what do you do with her then? How do you
Yeah, exactly.
proceed? You
Yeah, you got a
know?
problem on your hand if you got a, yeah, unless you're just going to
So
get
I mean,
rid
I
of her
feel like that's
somehow.
kind of what they've set us up for, right? That at the beginning of the next episode, we'll get Catherine's version, maybe all of it, maybe some of it. She's already drinking the tea, so probably she will succumb to the sleeping pills. Then we'll be in the present timeline with that question of, well, what Steven does and how he proceeds. So that's my expectation. Who knows? They could structure the episode differently,
Yeah.
and I just hope that it's good to close this one
And so
out.
all I can say is I'm looking forward to watching the finale. I'm looking forward to seeing, I mean, I'm prepared to be disappointed, but I'm looking forward to see what they do.
Same. Yeah, and which is good because after last week, we were both on the same page, being like, "I'm a little
Yeah.
unsure about where the series is going." And I feel like, all right, now we're back with episode 6.
Yes, sir.
Looking forward to seeing how it ends. So, yeah, we'll be back next week talking about the finale of Disclaimer, episode 7. We should get that out on Friday next week, I believe. In the meantime, check out TVObcessive.com. Lots of stuff that you can read there. You can follow the site on social media, search for TV Obsessive. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do leave a good rating, review, and so on and so forth. If you're on YouTube listening to this disclaimer part, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and see you next week.
All right. Looking forward to talking finale with you next week.